I make a special appeal to social media companies and media outlets. Please deal with the misinformation and disinformation that's on your shows. It has to stop.
Sense of me, you will never stop the free. Thinking that's gonna shut you down. Post the truth, they go to town. Sense of me, kick me off of every platform. I'll just go to get a gab and rumble. Now you can't stop me. I think we all see it, but cannot believe it. The glint in our eyes as we look at the sky to see that it's falling and people are calling. I think we all know that the end is nigh. But how can it be? The people is me. I posted a tweet and it got deleted. Don't look at me like I'm conceited. If you conceded, then tell me why you stuck on the YouTube, then on the Facebook, calling it meta. We fed it the cheese, I mean fed it with cheese. They wanna release all of your data to screw up your piece. They censor me, then take liberty. Don't even let me post up with the need. Album to blast, they gonna ban that. Take it up, genius, you can't even read the lyrics of Brandon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages from all across the world. You are now tuned into your favorite daily source for news, entertainment, and your daily brief of what is going on in the world. Welcome back to the Chandler brief, where the dress code is, of course, business casual, as evidenced by our super sweet tie back to the black for today. Shout out to everybody who's tuning in on a multitude of different platforms, as we, of course, do every weekday at 3 on all of our channels, including YouTube, Rumble, and other places. We have a ton of news that we're going to be jumping into. If you aren't quite sure what this show is, we dig into the news. We're very formal about it, as you can see, dress code, business casual. We, of course, rant about the news, but we mostly just try to bring it to you and have a good time, wrap it up all in a nice little bow. And today will be no different than the last couple of weeks that we've been doing this. We're going to keep up with it, so thank you guys so much for supporting me. If you're just getting in here, make sure you smash that like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. And let's get started with the news. Let's start the timer right at the 20-second mark of the 3rd minute. So we'll do that in just a few seconds, right about now. So, oh, come on. I hate when this happens. Hold on, I said it, and it just unsets itself. Okay, there it goes. U.S. is setting to welcome up to 100,000 Ukrainian refugees. This is big news. Now, you guys may have seen the title of the stream, Biden to send billions on refugees. Well, this is covering the first part. So today, we are agreeing to bring in 100,000 refugees from the Ukraine crisis. Let's jump into this part of the story. The Biden administration plans to welcome up to 100,000 Ukrainians and others fleeing the country into the United States, a senior administration official told. Through a range of pathways, including U.S. refugee admissions programs, non-immigrant and immigrant visas, and other means. There will also be a focus on welcoming Ukrainians who have family members in the U.S. Additional details are expected to be unveiled in the coming weeks. U.S. officials think that most Ukrainians will choose to remain in Europe, close to family and their homes in Ukraine. But it is more than possible and likely that a good amount, well over 10, 20, 30,000, will be coming to America, which shouldn't be much cause for concern, but I wanted to highlight it to you guys anyways to show you where we are currently at in this crisis. The administration has been under scrutiny because many refugees, including those coming from Ukraine, have been prevented from entering the U.S., and in some cases detained at the southern border. This is partially due to restrictions that were implemented during the early days of the COVID pandemic. NBC reported Tuesday that it was unclear what authority President Joe Biden would use to expedite the entry of Ukrainians. Sources said the White House was considering both humanitarian parole, a presidential authority that does not guarantee permanent legal status, and the priority to designation program, which has been used for Afghans and others escaping war zones, they said. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said Biden will announce further American contributions to a coordinated humanitarian response to ease the suffering of civilians inside Ukraine. This is the part that is now coming through today. We have essentially announced that we will be sending more money to Ukraine, which is where I'm saying spend billions on refugees. Biden says, today I am announcing the U.S. is prepared to commit more than $1 billion in humanitarian assistance to help get relief to the millions of Ukrainians affected by the war. We will invest $320 million to bolster democratic resilience and defend human rights in Ukraine. Let's hear how he says and see if my impression is anywhere nearby close.
And today I'm announcing the United States is prepared to commit more than $1 billion in humanitarian assistance to help get relief to millions of Ukrainians affected by the war in Ukraine. Many Ukrainian refugees will wish to stay in Europe, closer to their homes. But we also will welcome 100,000 Ukrainians to the United States with a focus on reuniting families. And we will invest $320 million to bolster democratic resilience and defend human rights in Ukraine and neighboring countries. We're also coordinating with the G7 and the European Union on food security as well as energy security.
Energy security. We're obviously not at a great place when it comes to all this, and it's only getting worse to the point that we're sending more and more money. Now, I can't even keep a tab of how much money we've spent, or at least said we're going to be sending their way. $14 billion we're sending, and then like $1 billion of that was specifically for security. We were sending tanks and jets and bullets, oh my, all sorts of different things that we were sending their way. Do we have the facilities for that? I mean, it sure seems like for the last few decades we've been digging into money that we just simply don't have, but this is getting ridiculous. To Ukraine in a war with Russia, we're directly funding it, and we're expected to not have to deal with any consequences of that? Especially considering later on in this exact same speech, Biden then went on to say that there will be food shortages and that it's going to get real. I think you should get real and remember that you're the president of the United States, not the United Globe. As much as people say all the point of the leader of the free world cannot be led unless there is a country leading it. Keep that in mind. Let's check what he said here.
Nothing more to report. With regard to food shortage, yes, we did talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well.
So the sanctions are coming right back at us. That's what Biden is saying to us. I'm going to start playing that sound every time he says something that is just so shocking and asinine that I cannot process it. We're going to be dealing with food shortages. It's going to get real while sending billions and millions, and yes, that is billions with a
Billions?
B, to Ukraine for whatever purposes they have. What are we doing here? What is there to accomplish? Especially with more and more Americans waking up to the fact that Ukraine isn't as squeaky clean and a beacon of democracy and freedom as they hope. That people are being beaten in the streets, they're being tied to poles, there's looting happening rampantly, there's Nazi factions operating within Ukraine that even Russia, which Russia is Russia, even they're calling out saying these people are disgusting. What are we doing here? Sending money their way. Somebody's saying something. St. June says, security. That's a good one. Ann says, shoot, didn't get notified, afternoon, can't stand lizard when his mouth is moving. Yeah, YouTube does not send out notifications for my stream, so that's why you guys have to set your own notification. So if you like watching our show, you can actually set a daily alarm on your app for 3 p.m., and that's when our show comes on live each day, as well as our shows in the evening at 8, of which we'll be having one again tonight as well, as we do those on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Shout out to the people who have supported our channel and our current Hall of Heroes as well, P. Diaz, and our other one here, which has yet to be filled, so if you're interested in joining the Hall of Heroes, you can do so right up there. But let's move on a little bit to another part of what we're announcing today, because if you guys may or may not remember, Biden is actually in Brussels today because he flew out for this whole Ukraine NATO type of hearing deal. The reason I'm not so well spoken on it is because most people forgot, including myself. He said, we're going to be going out to Brussels, and we said, okay, have fun. Forgetting that, one, he's the president, and two, he's got some sort of business he's taking care of. Well, this business is starting to get out there a little bit, and it's making some major waves as to what he is up to. Biden says that allies must stay united against Russia, and that they should expel Russia from the G20, which is, wow, that's a big move. That's a big move, considering that there are other more, or I should say less savory figures within the G20. President Biden said the most effective tool to end the invasion of Ukraine will be keeping NATO and European allies united and punishing those countries who defy sanctions against Russia. He also said, following a day of meeting with key allies here, that Russia should be expelled from the G20 group of nations, and that if the other G20 nations didn't support expelling Russia from the group, then he would make the case for Ukraine to be able to participate in the meetings. So if Russia doesn't get kicked out, he's going to say, Ukraine, come back in. Or come in the first place. The single most important thing for us to do, I gotta do this in the Biden voice. The single most important thing for us to do, to stay unified, and the world to continue to focus on what a brute this guy is. He needs to
Rub my leg down.
Oh, I mean Putin. Is all the innocent people's lives that will be lost and ruined, and what's going on? Biden said during a press conference. If you're Putin, and you think that Europe is going to crack in a month or 6 weeks or 2 months, why not? They could take anything for another month. But the reason I asked for the meeting, we have to stay fully, totally united. Biden attended an emergency gathering of NATO leaders Thursday, where a senior administration official described the mood as having been sober. It's been resolute, and it's been incredibly united. The NATO summit was followed by a meeting with leaders of the Group of Seven, leading industrial nations, and an address to European Union leaders. As the biggest conflict in Europe since World War II enters its second month, the discussions here stood to be among the most consequential of Biden's presidency. While the U.S. rolled out new steps aimed at further harming the Russian economy and additional assistance for Ukraine refugees, as well as our own economy, clearly as food shortages are getting real, rolled out new steps aimed at harming their economy, Biden made no new military commitments to Ukraine, aside from sending billions upon their way for whatever military aid they deal fit. While Biden has committed $2 billion in military assistance to Ukraine, that country's President Volodymyr Zelensky told NATO on Thursday that his nation still needs more military equipment, specifically tanks and jet fighters. They want to sop you into thinking that Ukraine is winning this war and that they have a chance. And so that they can dance in front of you and say, send more money our way, and encourage the little boys on Reddit to fly out to Ukraine and ride the train and then get thrown in some meat shield squad. That's what they're encouraging right now. And it's clear to see why so many people are like, okay, hold on, we need to back up, reevaluate this. I mean, you wonder why there hasn't been as much calls for no-fly zones anymore. I mean, he made his rounds through Canadian Parliament and United States Congress just last week, but nothing has really come of it because him going through those channels has made it more clear to people that, oh wait, if we do a little research into this, we can see why there's a lot of reasons why not to do it. There's a lot of concern, because you have to support and defend a no-fly zone. You have to shoot down Russian jets. Oh wait, that's a problem. We can't do that. Nanya says it would be nice if U.S. citizens could file petitions to prevent taxpayers' money from going to other countries. Yeah, if you had some sort of conditional tax of which you'd have to opt in. But I guess then at that point, if you had to opt into various things your money would be funding, the government couldn't do whatever they want. Like, for instance, subjugate you or send money somewhere else so that you can't get food. Because in the scheme of things, you're paying the government so that they can send sanctions and send guns and other things to Ukraine for a war that is not yours. You don't have any skin in the game, and it doesn't matter whether Ukraine wins or loses to you in the long run. Okay, so that's Section 1. And then Section 2 impose sanctions on that area, on Russia, so much so that it will be harder for you to get a hold of food at home, of which you would, of course, still have to spend money on. It'll either get more expensive or simply not be there. We are paying the government at this point to make our lives harder, and they expect us to want to keep doing it? You guys ever wonder why so many people want to avoid their taxes, especially rich people? Well, I think you guys can understand now. But speaking of pay the government to make our lives even harder, this goes in tandem with yet another thing you have to pay a lot of money for in 2022 with the way things are going. It's kind of a two-pronged way they're making things harder. That is plane flight, whether it be gas prices to even drive to the airport or for jet fuel, or whether it be getting on the plane and having to deal with a masked Nazi. Yes, there are a lot of people who are crazy about it, but it seems as of now that airlines are starting to see that people really don't want to deal with this. We don't want to deal with this anymore, and have now penned a letter to President Joe Biden requesting that they drop federal mask mandates on planes and testing requirements for travelers. This is big. This is literally the airlines saying, please, Biden, enough is enough. Let us go. We're going to jump some more into that story, but first things first, I want to remind you that this show is, of course, 100% supported and sponsored by viewers like you. So shout out to our people who are watching here on YouTube and over on Rumble. If you're interested in supporting our ability to bring this content to you daily, and as well as our bi-weekly shows on Tuesdays and Thursdays, then make sure you consider a one-time or even a monthly donation to support our content over on donorbox.org/support-Chandler, of which you can find in the description below, or also, I'm just going to throw it in the chat for you guys. So if you're interested in supporting our content, you can do so there, and also be able to join our Hall of Heroes, which are the names that are above me. So shout out to P. Diaz, Saint June, Aaron Behringer, and all the people who have supported me in the past, or are considering to support me in the future. I appreciate it a ton. It keeps us going more than you know. Aaron says, the air industry is dying and they don't want to admit it. Actually, I think at this point, they are admitting it. They're like, all right, we've suffered enough. Get us out of this. Let me zoom in a little bit and then read this for you guys. The CEOs of the nation's largest airlines are asking the Biden administration to drop the federal mask mandate on airplanes, along with the pre-departure testing requirements for international travelers. Although COVID-19 cases in the U.S. have fallen sharply in the last 2 months and restrictions are being lifted across the country, the CDC earlier this month extended its transit mask mandate for 30 days until mid-April, and masking guidelines for airlines remain in place. Now is the time for the administration to sunset federal restrictions, including the international pre-departure testing requirement and the federal mask mandate, that are no longer aligned with the realities of the current pandemic environment. The CEOs of 10 U.S.-based passenger and cargo airlines, including Delta, American, and United, wrote in a letter to Biden. The letter states that while the airlines and their employees supported the mask mandate when it was first implemented, especially because it did away with the possibility for airline-by-airline rules, they feel it is no longer necessary. The persistent and steady decline of hospitalization and death rates are the most compelling indicators that our country is well protected against severe disease from COVID-19. Given that we have entered a different phase of dealing with the virus, we strongly support your view that COVID no longer control our lives. While initially popular with employees over the past 2 years, flight attendants and gate agents in particular have taken the brunt of flyer frustration over the mask rules. Despite fewer flyers than pre-pandemic levels, cases of disruptive passengers have soared over the last 2 years. Airlines last year banned thousands of passengers due to unruly behavior. And those are thousands of people who they can't get hundreds and thousands of dollars from over time with flights. That's a lot of money that they're losing, despite the fact that I'm sure they're taking a lot of joy in kicking out people that don't toe the line. It is critical to recognize that the burden of enforcing both the mask and testing requirements has fallen on our employees for 2 years now. This is not a function that they are trained to perform and subjects them to daily challenges by frustrated customers. This in turn takes a toll on their own well-being. Employees are suffering, we are suffering, their bottom line is suffering, and Dr. Fauci is celebrating. I think you could see why everybody is against the government on this issue, and it is only a matter of time. But even more than just gate agents and people who are involved in it, even flight attendants, who I'm sure you guys have seen as the most, I don't want to say authoritarian, but the ones that are on you about the masks, and most of the time because it's their job, but a lot of them have a lot to say about it. Well, they have come out against the mask mandates as well. At least a large group of Southwest flight attendants within a union have come together to pen a letter directly requesting that these mask mandates go away. Anne says, even in Florida, I see people alone in a car with masks. On couple had 2 masks. Can we say can't breathe? Nonya says, sounds like we don't need a wall. COVID is the wall. Aaron says, those are the type of people who have smoked a pack a day because 9 out of 10 doctors recommended Marlboro. That is crazy. That's crazy. Let's dig into this Southwest story, though. Following a historically unruly year in the skies for American flight crews and passengers, Southwest airline flight attendants have come together to ask President Joe Biden and regulators to end the federal mask mandate for passengers and workers aboard planes. According to the Dallas Morning News, the union representing 16,000 flight attendants, Local 556, of the Dallas-based airline, penned a letter this week asking top federal officials to repeal the mandate, citing mask policy enforcement as one of the chief struggles airline employees contend with on a daily basis. We strongly believe it is now time to give our members and passengers the opportunity to choose if they prefer to wear a mask while flying. Serving on board during these contentious times and enforcing mask compliance is one of the most difficult jobs we have ever faced as flight attendants. And imagine telling somebody else to wear a mask and dealing with all that while yourself wearing a mask and not being able to breathe. You can see why there's a lot of contention around this. People just don't want to deal with it. It's elderly people been scared to death, says Anne. Very true. Very true. Everybody's been scared. Everybody's been ruled by fear. And it seems that with all these studies coming out and the people that are talking about this, it has been nothing but but politics, nothing but an election, and nothing but getting power. The CDC has now admitted to the New York Times that it hid COVID data for political purposes. So they hid how not lethal this virus was, how not as much of a terrible thing as it was, simply for politics. They admitted this. According to a recent headline from the New York Times, the CDC isn't publishing large portions of COVID data it collects. The headline downplays what the article in fact reveals. 2 full years into the pandemic, the agency leading the country's response to the health emergency has published only a tiny fraction of the data it has collected, several people familiar with the data said. The article says when the CDC published the first significant data on the effectiveness of boosters in adults younger than 65, it left out the numbers of a huge portion of the population, 18 to 49, the group least likely to benefit from extra shots. So those that are saying you need to get these booster shots, there's actually no basis for that. The agency has been reluctant to make those figures public, according to the Times, because they might be misinterpreted as the vaccines being ineffective. After several inquiries from the New York Times, the CDC unexpectedly decided to publish its data on the risks of hospitalization and death from both unvaccinated and vaccinated Americans, with or without the booster being upon you. But it did so in a manner that obscures younger individuals' overall COVID risks, which is very low. Let me say that again, very low. Instead, attempting to force a comparison between vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals' hospitalization. The exact data about COVID risks by specific age has not been released in any graphical or easily viewable form anywhere. This rationale for deliberately hiding government-collected effectiveness data was even confirmed by the CDC spokeswoman. This taxpayer-funded agency didn't want to give taxpayers the full picture of vaccine effectiveness for their own good, right?
Stop the cap.
We've been lied to our faces, each and every one of us, but they want to call us terrorists. They want to call us misinformers. They want to ban my channel, or as Trudeau says it, those that are concerned are just cynical populists, right? Let's jump into this one. He says that those within the Freedom Convoy, and I'm sure by extension the People's Convoy, are cynical populists, as he spoke to the European Parliament. Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau attacked the Freedom Convoy protesters in a new speech to the European Parliament. Addressing the European audience, Trudeau said that the protesters who converged in Ottawa in trucks to honk their horns in protest of the country's mandates were cynical populists trying to exploit economic anxieties of average Canadians. Economic anxieties? Are you serious? Condemning it as a weakening of democratic institutions, Trudeau, who invoked the Emergencies Act to quell the protests, said that the protesters pretend to have easy solutions to play on people's fears. Even in Canada, where 90% of people are vaccinated and our motto as a country, peace, order, and good government, we saw anti-vaccine and anti-government protests evolve into illegal occupations of our communities and blockades of our borders. Just lies. Lies on top of lies to the people. Calling it an anti-vaccine when it truly was an anti-vaccine mandate, anti-mask mandate, and calling it an anti-government protest when it really was standing against the government doing something disgusting. I'm sure a lot of these people are fine with the government. A good amount of them voted for Justin Trudeau. Heck, a good amount of them worked within the government and lost their jobs simply for protesting, which I don't know 100% if it's outlined in some Bill of Rights in Canada, but I'm pretty sure that they uphold your right to protest as long as you aren't breaking the law and hurting anybody. And these people that protested, the majority of them broke zero laws. As much as they wanted to call it an illegal, unlawful, violent, dangerous protest, you can't sell a lie to a group of people like that are willing to stand up against it, which is just really, really sad to see that they were willing to go that far with it. Moving on to our final and probably one of the biggest stories I'll cover. And we're going to talk about it more tonight. Just give you guys a sneak peek of it. Trump has announced that he will be suing Hillary Clinton for legal fees accrued in the Russian collusion case. Yes, he will be filing a lawsuit against Hillary Clinton, the Democratic National Committee, and many others for the Russian collusion, Russian nothing burger. The Democratic National Committee and others for conspiring to remove him from the 2016 presidential election. The lawsuit, which was filed in the South Florida District Court, claims that Clinton and other members of the DNC orchestrated an unthinkable plot, one that shocks the conscience and is an affront to this nation's democracy. They wanted to cripple Trump's bid for presidency during the 2016 election. They worked together with a single, self-serving purpose, to vilify Donald Trump, the lawsuit says. This is a big story, and we're going to be breaking it all down tonight. So if you guys want to dig into this story and figure out what is going on, what are the odds that Trump's case goes through, and an all in all my opinion on what is going to happen as this case proceeds, then tune in with us once again tonight at 8 for Crump Live, where we're going to break it all down. That is 8 Eastern Standard Time. This is our twice weekly show we do every week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 Eastern Time. So if you guys want to tune in, make sure you do so once again tonight right here on this channel. If you haven't already, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe on your way out. Thank you guys so much for being tuned into the Chandler Brief. This is where we break down the news, and I'm happy you guys joined us here today. Shout out to my folks over on Rumble as well. You guys have been amazing. Thank you guys so much for being here, and aside from all that, I'll catch you next time, free thinkers. Don't forget to spread the virus of intelligence. Peace.
Into the light we go.